Sorry. Good evening, guys. So today we'll discuss few problems. So first two problems are related to design patterns, how to print a pattern. So next we'll move on to array related problem. Some little difficult problem, array related problem. We have seen so many logical coding on arrays. So today we'll do two problems related to array itself. So before that, simple problem. So how to print the pattern like this? I just want to print 4 rows, 4 columns, stars like this. How can I approach the problem? Am I audible for you all now? Am I audible? How can I approach the problem? See here, we just want two for loops. We just need two for loops. One for row purpose, one for column purpose. Only two for loops. Observe here. I is equal to 1, I less than or equal to 5, I plus plus. Then we have the inner for loop. Outer for loop is for row purpose. Inner for loop is for column purpose. So while executing the for loop, inner for loop, we are printing the star. We are printing the star. Outer for loop, it is for row purpose. Outer for loop, it is for row purpose. Inner for loop, it is for column purpose. For every column, we are printing the star. See, we have 5 rows. I'm starting I from 1 less than or equal to 5. 5 rows. Then I'm printing in the 5 columns. I'm printing in the 5 columns. So for the first iteration, what happens? I is equal to 1, entering the inner for loop. J is equal to 1, J less than or equal to 5. 5 times I'm printing the star. 5 times I'm printing the star in the same line. 5 times I'm printing the star in the same line. Just using print, not println. I'm just using print, not println. After printing 5 stars, I'm just keeping system.out.println statement. That gives me the next line. Cursor to the next line. Cursor will be in the next line. If I just keep this system.out.println, it will be giving me one new line. Cursor will be in the next line, blank line. Simple solution. Try to execute it. See, 5 rows, 5 columns. 5 rows, 5 columns. In the interview, they'll be asking much more difficult pattern to print. It is very easy actually. So they will be asking different patterns. Print triangle, print pyramid, like that. It is very simple. So if I want the space, you can just give the space here. After printing star, I'm just giving one white space. Now execute. It is more like square. It is more like square now. So the next pattern, I want to print like this. Okay, this is the pattern. So what is the approach? So please try it out. Please try. How can I approach this problem? So totally, how many rows are there? Totally, how many rows are there? 7 rows we have here. 7 rows. Then, so it is keep on incrementing till fourth row. It is keep on incrementing till fourth row. After fourth row, from fifth row, it is keep on decrementing. Till fourth row, it is incremented. The stars, number of stars are incremented. After fourth row, from fifth row, it is keep on decrementing. Stars are keep on decrementing. How can I approach the problem? So I'll be using two for loops. One it is for row purpose. One it is for row purpose. Another it is for column purpose to print the star. Another for loop is for column purpose to print the star. If anybody know the logic for this, please send it immediately. Please don't copy from anywhere. Please do not copy from anywhere. Please try it out for yourself. Please send it. We'll discuss the problem. I just want to print the pattern like this. What is the solution? Coding solution. Simple pattern. So anybody know the solution? I is equal to 1, I less than is equal to 4, I plus plus. Let's try it out. So till 4 we get 4 rows. I is incremented. Then 3. Next it is inner. I think inner. It is inner for loop. So whether it is inner and outer for loop or these two for loops are separate. Ajay Verma. Whether these two for loops are inner for loops are, sorry, outer and inner for loops are, these two for loops are separate. Separate for loop. See, if in case of separate, it is very easy. If in case of separate, it is very easy. So can I make use of outer and inner for loop for this? In the solution, can I make use of outer and inner for loop instead of separate for loop? Separate for loop is fine, but if I want to use the outer and inner for loop, it is very easy in case of separate for loops. Please observe this code. We'll discuss. See, it is the outer for loop. It is the outer for loop, and it is the inner for loop. We have one if condition. If this becoming true only, it is entering the inner for loop. Observe this code. Whether this works fine or not. See, please write it down. Please write this solution. We'll discuss iteration by iteration. We'll discuss. Please write this solution. I'll give 2 minutes time. Please write the solution. We'll discuss iteration by iteration. Please try to analyze what is going on. First, write it down. Without using separate for loops. Without using separate for loops. I'm only using one for loop, outer for loop, then inner for loop. I starting from 1, I starting from 1. Then number of rows I need to print, that is 7. Till I becomes 8. Till I becomes 8. It will be keep on iterating. It will be keep on iterating. When I becomes 8, it will comes out of the for loop. By using entire this section, it belongs to one for loop. It is the outer for loop. We are printing the pattern, this pattern. So what is the first iteration? Come to the first iteration. Number of rows, it is 7. I starting from 1. I starting from 1. Outer for loop is there. Int I is equal to 1 less than or equal to rows. Returning true. Returning true. If that is returning true, we have the if condition. We have the if condition. Whether 1 less than or equal to 3 plus 1, that is 4. Whether 1 less than or equal to 4 becoming true. Now we have the inner for loop. Now we have the inner for loop. First iteration for the inner for loop. First iteration for the inner for loop. J is equal to 1. Initializing j with 1. Then whether j less than or equal to I, that means 1 less than or equal to 1. Yes. Now printing one star here. printing one star, printing one star. After that, j is becoming 2. J is becoming 2. Whether 2 less than or equal to 1, becoming false. Becoming false. After that, after that, I is becoming 2. Before I is becoming 2, we have one statement, system.out.println. System.out.println. It will be keeping the cursor in the next line. It will be keeping the cursor in the next line. This is the statement. So the current updated pattern, that is one star that has been printed, and cursor is now blinking at the next line. Cursor is at the next line. Now I is 2. I is 2. So checking the for loop, outer for loop, whether 2 less than or equal to 7. Yes, becoming true. Executing the if condition. 2 less than 4. Yes, becoming true. Executing the inner for loop. Executing the inner for loop. What are all the iterations? So please observe here. For the outer for loop, I is initializing only once. For the first iteration, I is initializing only once. Then until this becomes false, it will be keep on incrementing or decrementing based on the third part of the for loop. I is initializing only once, not again and again. For the second iteration, inner for loop. Inner for loop. How many times it is executing? 2 times it is executing. I is 2. J starting from 1. 1 less than or equal to 2. Becoming true. Then 2 less than or equal to 2. True. So how many stars has been printed? 2 stars. 2 stars. In the same line. Keep that in mind. Why? Because only print, not println. If in case of just a print, it is printing in the same line. Next, for the third iteration of the inner for loop, whether 3 less than or equal to 2, becoming false. Coming out of the inner for loop, not the outer for loop. Coming out of the inner for loop, at the end we have this statement to get the blank line, to get the cursor in the next line. Now the updated pattern is like this. Updated updated pattern, it is like this. Single star in the next line, double star. Come to the third iteration, rows value remains same until I becomes false. Until the outer for loop becomes false. Until the outer for loop becomes false. Then I keep on incrementing. I is equal to 3. I is equal to 3. Whether 3 less than or equal to 7, becoming true. If condition also becoming true. Then coming to the inner for loop to print the star. How many times it is executing? J is 1. Then 1 less than or equal to 3. I value is 3. 3 times star will be printed. 3 times star will be printed. When j becomes 4, when j becomes 4, for loop is breaking, inner for loop is breaking. Now we just get the end statement of the outer for loop. That is to get the new line, to get the cursor in the new line. So the updated pattern, it is like this. 3 stars Latest one, it is 3 stars. Come to the fourth iteration, I became 4. I became 4. Outer for loop returning true. If condition also returning true. Why? Because 4 less than or equal to 4. Equal to is there. 4 less than or equal to 4. Becoming true. Come to the inner for loop to print the stars. How many times stars are printed in this case? J starting from 1, 1 to 4, 1 to 4. 4 stars will be printed in the same line. 4 stars. 4 stars. Then when J becomes 5, when J becomes 5, it is breaking the inner for loop. Now we get the last statement as usual to get the cursor in the next line. That is the part of the outer for loop. That is the part of the outer for loop. Now it is the latest updated pattern. Now from fifth iteration onwards, we keep on decrementing the stars. We keep on decrementing the stars. What is the logic here? So I value is 5. Outer for loop returning true. Now if condition is becoming false, 5 is not less than or equal to 4. 5 is not less than or equal to 4. If condition is becoming false, now else will be executed. We have else block. After if block, we have the else block that is executed from the fifth iteration. From the fifth iteration. J starting from 1. And what is the calculation here? J less than or equal to rows 7 plus 1 8 minus 1 7. Sorry, 7 plus 1. 7 plus 1, that is 8. 8 minus I value it is 5. I value it is 5. 7 plus 1, 8. 8 minus 5, that is 3. Whether 1 less than or equal to 3 becoming true. How many stars will be printed now? 3 stars. 1 2 3. J is equal to 1, J is equal to 2, J is equal to 3. 3 stars will be printed. In the else block, 3 stars. Next, when J becomes 4, when J becomes 4, whether 4 less than or equal to 3, here calculations are there. See, row plus 1, 8. 8 minus 5, it is 3. See, this calculation remains same, but here what is changing? J value is changing. J value it is changing. I value it is same. I value it is same, but J value it is keeps on changing for the iterations. Now, when J becomes 4, it is becoming false. Then it is just printing one blank line. See, this blank line statement, it is out of the else. Out of the else, it is inside the outer for loop. Now, what is the updated pattern? 3 stars has been printed. 3 stars has been printed for this else block execution. Come to the sixth iteration. I is becoming 6. 6 less than or equal to 7. True, becoming true. If block will be false because 6 is not less than or equal to 4. I is becoming false. Sorry. If block, first if block is becoming false, else will be executed. Else will be executed. Now, how many times stars are printed in the else? Two times. So, so I value rows plus 1. 7 plus 1, 8 minus I value 6. 8 minus 6, it is 2. 8 minus 6, it is 2. Now, printing 2 stars. Printing 2 stars here as well. When j becomes 3, 3 is not less than 2. It is becoming false. We are just getting a new line. In this iteration, only 2 stars has been printed. Only 2 stars. Come to the 7th and last iteration. I is becoming 7. I is becoming 7. Now, outer for loop returning true. Then only we can enter the outer for loop body. Okay, then if condition, it is becoming false. 7 is not less than 4, then else it is executing. In this case, j starting from 1. What is the calculation here? 7 plus 1, 8. 8 minus 7, it is 1. Now, only one star will be printed. J, it is starting from 1. Only one star will be printed in this case. When I when j becomes 2, when j becomes 2, becoming false. When j becomes 2, the for loop is becoming false. For loop is becoming false. Only one star has been printed, and then we get the new line. New line. Updated pattern, it is like this. Single star that has been printed in the last iteration. Now, I value it is incremented to 8. Okay, for the 8th iteration. I value it is incremented to 8. But what happens? If I value is 8, 8 less than or equal to 7. That is not true. 8 is not less than or equal to 7. So it is becoming false. It won't enter the body itself. So this is the latest updated pattern we get. Are we getting our solution? Are we getting our solution? See, without using the outer and inner for loop, if I'm using the separate for loops, it is easy. Observe, this is the solution that has been suggested in the previous batch, previous section. It is a separate for loop. Okay, separate for loops. So first one it is for incrementing stars. Second one it is for decrementing. From 4 it is starting. 4 stars, from 4 stars for the second for loop to keep on decrementing the stars. Observe one point here. See, here for every for loop we have the inner for loop. We have the inner for loop. So it is not more convenient. You might get confusion. What happens here in this case? we have the inner for loop for the first separate for loop. These two are not the part of this for loop. These two statements are not the part of this for loop. Only immediate statement. Only immediate statement is the part of this for loop. So this statement, it is just printing the next line. It is the part of the outer for loop. It is part of the outer for loop. Only immediate statement will be the part of the for loop. If I'm not giving any curly braces, if I'm not giving any curly braces, immediate statement will be the only statement is the part of the for loop, immediate for loop. Got it or not? Got it or not? This is our next problem. Do right shift by 2 for the elements of given array. Right shifting by 2. So we have discussed the array related logical programs, but it is somewhat little difficult. Little difficult. Right shift by 2. Shifting the elements of an array. Right shift by 2 elements. So what is the solution for this? What is the solution? Anybody? Right shift by 2. Right right shift doubles the number. Reduces. See, I'll give you some idea. Observe. Observe this array. It is the index. So whether this array elements are even or odd, length of this array, whether this length of the array even or odd. So the length is 11. Length is 11. So what we are doing here, observe, right shift by 2. So what is the difference you have noticed in this array? Right shift by 2. Element 8, it is moved to the 30th place. Whatever the element it is present at the index number 8, that is moved to the 10th index place. Now 30 is gone. 30 is gone. Now here, whatever is there at the 6th index, it is moving on to the 8th index. Now it is 9. 8th index contains 9 now. Right shift by 2. See, observe, simple. 8 is moved to the 30th place. Okay, 12, it is moved to the 9th place. 9 is moved to the 8th index. 6 is moved to the 7th. For the first iteration, what is happening here? Element 8 is moving. Okay, right shift by 2. Index number 8 element is moving to the index number 10. At the end, what we are getting, observe. 3 is remaining. 3. Right shift by 2. Any solution? So please observe the code here. Here I'm just printing the initial array content. Then this is where operation is going on. Right shift by 2, right shift by 2. Then we are printing the final array. Then we are printing the final array. See guys, please note down this elements and index. Note down the array and with index. Array elements and index. We'll go iteration by iteration. Then you should note down this logic. Please note down this logic. Can you do the first iteration? Can you perform the first iteration? Please, everybody, please perform the first iteration. I is starting from x dot length minus 1. Length is 10. 10 minus 1. Sorry. Length is 11. Length minus 1. Starting from 10th index. Starting from 10th index. Length is 11. Length minus 1, that is 10th index. Anybody done first iteration? Anybody has done first iteration? Please note down this array and with index. Then write down the logic here. For loop. Perform the first iteration. Sir, the first iteration. What is the I value and what is this Boolean expression is resulting? I value is 10 actually. Okay, 10 starting from 10. I value is 10. Whether 10 greater than 1. If that is true, going to the body, what is the code? Observe. So here, what is x of I minus 2? I value is 10. 10 minus 2, it is 8. It is just the index. Okay, don't get confused. It is the index. Okay, it is the index x of I. 10 minus 2, 8. It is the index I'm referring. Whatever the content is there at index 8, that is supplied to the x of I. What is the x of I? That is 10. 10th index. At the 10th index, currently we have 30. Currently we have 30 at the 10th index. Now, at the 8th index, we have 8. We have 8. So, it is shifting to the right. Whatever the content is there at the 8th index, that is moving on to the 10th index. Now, index 10 will be 8. Index 10 will be 8. We are losing the 30. We are losing the 30. Observe. Before I value, after executing for loop, I value. So, after that, what is the I minus minus? I is decremented by 1. I is decremented by 1. I becomes 9 now. Observe here, initial array, latest array. 30 is gone. Now whatever the content is there at the 8th index, that is moved to the 10th index. It is the latest array, updated latest array. Next iteration. Next iteration. For the second iteration. Second iteration. Second iteration. Keep track of I. I is equal to 9 now. Is before executing the for loop, before it is becoming false, before for loop is becoming false, and after it becomes 8. 9 greater than 1. Yeah, entering the for loop. What is the body? Now whatever is there at x of I minus 2, that is 7th index, whatever the content is there at the 7th index, that is moving on to the 9th index. ninth index. Whatever is the content is there at the seventh index, that is 12. That is moving on to the ninth index. That is moving on to the ninth index. 12 is moved from seventh index to the ninth index. Now observe, we have lost 7 now. Value 7 we have lost. Earlier it had 7. Now we have lost 7. Two elements are gone now. Two elements, 30 and 7. Come to the next iteration. I is now 8. I is now 8. I is now 8. 8 greater than 1 becoming true. Now what is in the body? Whatever the content is there at the x of 6 index. See 8 minus 2. 8 minus 2. 8 minus 2, that is 6. Whatever the content is there at the index number 6, that is 9. That is moving on to the x of 8 index, that is whatever the content is there at the x of 6th index, that is moving on to the 8th index. 9 is moving on to the 8th index now. This is the latest. From here onwards, we don't lose any of the elements. I value it is now 7. Fourth iteration. Please follow this. Please do along with me. Simple. I'm explaining iteration by iteration. 7 greater than 1 becoming true. Whatever the content is there at the 5th index, that is moving on to the 7th index. 5th index content is moving on to the 7th index. Shifting. Right shift by 2. Simple. before it is 6, after it becomes 5. Whatever the content is there at the index number 4, that is moving on to the index number 6. 4 is moving on to the 6th index. That's it. It's simple logic. But to trace this, we get the time. Always try to trace the program like this. Always try to trace the program like this. You'll get the clarity. If you're calculating in the mind, you might get confused. For the fifth iteration, 5 becoming 4. So whatever the element is there at the third index, okay, it is moving on to the fifth index. 10 is moving on to the fifth index. That's it. So I is 4, and after for loop becomes 3. Whatever the content is there at the second index, it is moving on to the fourth index. 1 is moved to the fourth index. Eighth iteration. Whatever is there at the index 1, that is moving on to the index number 3. 6 is moving on to the index number 3. Come to the ninth iteration. So it is 2, 1. Whatever the content is there at the 0, 0th index, that is moving on to the first. So whatever the content is there at 0th index, that is at the 0th index, we have 3. That is moving on to the x of 2, second index. Whatever the content is there at the 0th index, 3 is moving on to the second index. 3 is moving on to the second index. So after that, what happens? I becomes false. I becomes false. One greater than one becoming false. Now it is the right shift by 2 of the array elements. Right shift by 2 of the array elements. Got it or not? Got this or not? Understood? Simple logic. Shall we move on to the next problem? Understood or not? Guys, please respond. Shall we move on to the next problem? This is the problem statement. Reverse only even indexed of the elements. Reverse only even indexed elements from the given array. Reverse only even indexed elements from the given array. Reverse only even indexed elements from the array. Any solution for this? Please think about the problem. Reverse only even indexed elements. So what is the array we have here? What is the array? Try to understand the problem here. Observe. array length is even. Okay. Array length is even or odd? Array length is even. Index is starting from 0 to 9. Length is 10. Index is from 0 to 9. Final array should be look like this. Whatever the element is there at 0th index and whatever the element is there at the 8th index should be swapped. Both are even indexes. Both are even indexes. Whatever the element is there at the second index and whatever the element is there at the 6th index should be swapped. 9 is coming to 6th index, 1 is coming to second index, and there are no even indexes are available to swap. Only one even index is available, that is we are just leaving it. So this is the solution. This is the final array after reversing only even indexed elements. Understood the problem? 0 and 8 should be swapped. 2 and 6 should be swapped. That's it. 0 and 8, 2 and 6. What is the approach? See, we are going to swap the even indexed. It is not the reversing to print the array in the reverse order. Instead, it is to swap means reverse. Okay, to reverse the even indexed elements. Reversing even indexed elements. What is the approach? Observe this program carefully. Observe this code. So initially, I'm just printing the initial array content. Then we have the logic. So this is the logic. This much. This much is the logic. Try to understand what is going on in this logic. We'll go iteration by iteration. Please observe the logic here. Please note down this logic and please note down the array. Note down the array and note down the logic. Trace it out. Iteration by iteration. Everybody should note down. First note down this complete initial array and the final array after reversing. Please note down. So we'll discuss in the next class. Please note down this array and note down the logic. Trace it out iteration by iteration. Next class we will anyway discuss the iterations. Please note down. Fine. Now note down the logic here. Please note down the logic. If you want, you can take the screenshot. If you want, you can take the screenshot. This is the logic. Okay. Please take the screenshot and trace it out iteration by iteration. Iteration by iteration. So please mark your attendance, everybody. Please mark your attendance. Have you written this? Have you written this, everybody? Please trace it out step by step. Please trace it out. Fine. Thank you, everybody. We will continue in the next session. Thank you.